Welcome. Geo is in snowy Wisconsin today. We are here with Will Sandford, who is the director of coworking at Yardi. He has some exciting news. And Will, I know I'm really excited to talk to you because we've been on prep calls. I got to interview Anat Yardi at the GWA conference in September. So Will was like the go-between guy. But I want to hear more about your background, and you have some exciting announcements to share. So thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I don't know if I'm going to hold as much clout as an art in this conversation, but it's an exciting time to be at Yardi, exciting time to be in Flex. So I think there's a lot to cover here today. I guess maybe to let like the cat out of the bag, why don't we
Okay,
just
let's
start
go.
with the fun news, start with a bang.
Yeah.
So, announcing on Wednesday, Jan 15th, everyone will be seeing that Yardi Systems has acquired DeskPass in the US and Hubble HQ in the UK. So, I mean, a lot to dive into there, but we're really happy to have and his team at Despass and Tushar and the Hubble team join Yardi Systems. All of their team members are going to be coming over, and in the week that we've spent with them figuring out like what the future of this for us looks like, we've been super impressed with their teams. I mean, they are by every definition startups that really know their customer, really focus on delivering value, and probably most importantly, like really love co-working. Like they have been grinding it out for 8 to 10 years, building these marketplaces in our space, and they really care and believe in this stuff. So I think that is part of kind of what drew Anat and the Yardi team towards partnering up and acquiring their businesses because look, they know things that we don't. They have the same vision for us of a connected ecosystem of co-working and flex spaces, and we really share that vision. So yeah, that's the big news for this week. Obviously, there's some other co-working news that has gone on this week as well, but yeah, that's ours, and I think it really, hopefully, kind of rubber stamps our commitment to building marketplaces and delivering more customer value in the co-working and flex space.
Yeah, and I think it's funny. I've been fielding calls all day from various people, including reporters. They're like, "What do you think this means?" And funny enough, knowing that we were having this conversation, but not really knowing exactly what it was going to be. It's funny. Several people asked about, what does this mean to the industry and the overall future of it? And I mean, your investment in these technology platforms just shows how much you believe in the future of this, the same as your investment into WeWork. And so I think that's the interesting part with the CBRE Industrious further investment is I think there's been enough of, we kept talking about, post pandemic and all. I mean, we're so far past the pandemic at this point that we have enough data to prove that this future of work is going to continue being a major issue / change that's going to drive the future of office. And so I think this is a good indicator of that. What part, and this kind of steps into what your background is. So let's kind of talk about your background, how you stepped into this role, and then even ultimately full circle back to this is how did you participate in this acquisition and everything involved with that?
Yeah, sure. So my background that kind of like led me to where we're at today, and I think everyone in co-working has some serendipitous story as to like why they're doing what they're doing. But I was a real estate investment banker for the better part of 10 years. Like many people, didn't want to bang my head against that wall for too much longer and ended up at WeWork. And like most people who did the WeWork thing, baptism of fire into what that whirlwind was in the kind of 2018 through 21 years. But what I really walked away from that, and my role there was leading our real estate advisory team, doing deal structuring and broker relations on the West Coast for a number of our largest deals, and had the opportunity to work with a lot of great people across the flex industry that all kind of cut their teeth on co-working, during that same period. So there's a lot of people I love across the industry from those days. But what it really led me towards believing, specifically from sitting in rooms with the corporate real estate leaders for the largest companies who we all believe are like the kind of the biggest building block that's going to make this industry what we need it to be. their involvement, meaningful involvement in it, is that very few of them ever want to be brand loyal, right? They are brand agnostic. They want the best space that meets their employee need in the right spot. And real estate is just far too slow moving to deliver that through one operator. So working at WeWork, what I really walked away with was this view of it's never going to be one person. You can never be so big that you're going to serve all those customer needs. And, just the difference in size between WeWork and IWG and their comparative success tells you that. So where my mind really went was this has to be a technology provider that provides a connected ecosystem of spaces that meets a variety of niche needs. So, that led to me doing a small stint in prop tech at a visitor management place called Envoy, but ultimately to coming over to Yardi, who has a very similar vision, right? Like through our Yardi Cube platform, we connect over 1,300 co-working operators into a technical backbone that is our Cube infrastructure. And now through things like, our partnership between, Vast Co-working and WeWork, or our co-working cafe marketplace, now enhanced by Hubble and Despass, is we really want to create more access points to more inventory that meets all of these needs. That, you can turn around to that corporate real estate leader and they say, I need a 10-person team space for 3 months in Cincinnati, and I need a first in, first out office for 100 people in New York. And through the network, they can achieve all of those things. And I don't think until recently that's been available, but I guess the one word that always comes up as we think about why am I here, what is Yardi's strategy, is backbone. We want to build the backbone so that we can facilitate that. And, in many ways, I have to imagine that that's probably the driving force between CBRE and Industrious News as well, right? Like we're in a consolidation part of the market, and that gives us all the opportunity to start building the backbone infrastructure to deliver on that need.
Yeah, and I think an interesting part is you bring that up, and I want to parlay it into your side of it. But the way I've been explaining the CBRE industry side is they've got enough relationships, enough of a track record to go, we know our enterprise users are going to continue to use this type of space, one. And also, we know that our landlords and people that we do property management for, do acquisitions for, everything along those lines are going to continue to use this. And then the other part is they have a really good understanding of the financial markets, right? And the fact that they have to run this by their banks, their equity groups, and everything else. And so how does that parlay over to your continued investment, right? From a technology standpoint, I can sit here as a layperson they can use this technology, but doesn't really understand it, is going, hey, we understand how our partners, being landlords and things like of that nature, are being affected financially and technology wise and everything else. But how would you, is that accurate? Would you tie those two together?
I mean, I think you all more than most want preferable outcomes for the whole industry that grows our segment rather than create standout winners. Yardi definitely believes that more collaboration versus competition is needed in our segment for everyone to win, because our market size is nowhere near what we all forecast it to be. So I guess for ourselves, building that backbone, whether it's making sure that we are working with our customers, industry partners, technology partners to start building, standardized data benchmarks so that people can expand more quickly, that they can finance their business on more preferable terms, that they have simpler and more simply negotiated relationships with their landlords. Yeah, that's what we want to grow our industry. And I would also hope that, all of those synergies that you mentioned across CBRE that enables them to go speak to their capital markets team about a potential, management agreement partnership between Industrious and one of their equity partners is digested by all segments of our industry. I'd like to hope that their goal is similar in that they are benefiting the growth of this segment. So again, I think we're all approaching it a little bit differently, but I would hope that we're all approaching it with a view of let's make this a more productive economic environment for growth for everyone participating in the flex segment.
For sure. So how long have you been in? 6 months?
7 months, I think, maybe today.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, you've been to all the events. I've seen you there. I've participated with you. You've been not only to the big association with Juicy and GWA, but at this point, you've been to private dinners. And I'm assuming you've been to some of the larger office organizations, right? The Cornets, the
Yeah.
ULIs, some of those things of the world. So, what would you say, from a personal standpoint, has been your experience with the industry overall, as far as how you were welcomed, how you've kind of fit in, right? Because there's a lot of people like Sam Rosen, right, with Despass that you said's outside your office, has been around forever. Everyone knows who he is, has incredible relationships. So how has your personal integration been so far?
I mean, I'd say I'd take my hat off to you a little bit on this. Like, it's a very welcoming segment to work in, right? Everyone is lovely. Everyone, for the most part, is hyper collaborative. We all want to share for mutual gain, and that is great. Coming into this kind of like the co-working industry from the outside, and I say from the outside because at WeWork, one world, that is WeWork.
Yeah.
I didn't know you when I worked there. So I'd say everyone is hyper welcoming. The challenge I see with kind of the industry is that we can become sometimes a little bit of an echo chamber within the co-working world itself. So if I think about like the really great events that GWA and Juicy throw and bringing us together to cross-pollinate ideas, that's great within the current challenges we face, but doesn't really address the existential ones. Like, what we need is more co-working and shared space representation at the cornets of the world, to bring that corporate customer in, to educate the corporate real estate leader, to go talk to the capital markets team from the large brokerages and equity investors to help them understand or start to digest what it's like to participate in Flex. So that cross-pollination, I think, it's being addressed a little bit in the industry. I know there's specific industry groups, ULI and a couple of breakouts from Cornet that are looking to do this, but those worlds need to come closer together again if there's to be any mutual benefit to growing the size of our segment.
Yeah, and I think, quite honest, and we've been working on this to some extent as GWA, is how do we lower those barriers? Because even back to it's been really difficult for us, quite honestly, having come from, much like you, right? You came from WeWork, I came from Regis, IWG. It's been hard to get those big ones in. It's been hard to get IWG in, WeWork and Industrious and all those to the table. Luckily, we've been able to get Industrious, has been collaborative over the years to some extent. And then WeWork, we were able to get some representation at the Immersive in New York, just because, back to your point on at ULI, we were able to meet Kate through that. And so I think, how do you envision, because you're playing in all these worlds, right? How do you envision that we could do a better job as an industry to bring those people in? Because 100%, I agree with you. And my goal, as you and I have discussed, has been, how do we get the people from Cornet and ULI to GWA and Juicy? How do we get the people from GWA Juicy to ULI and Cornet? I mean, from where you sit, what does that look like?
Couple things. I mean, hell, we could address it a million ways, but a couple come to mind. Like, we've talked about this previously, and I know that we've talked about it collectively with even competitors and industry partners of Yardi around, like, there needs to be an independent, trusted custodian of industry benchmarks. Like, what does performance look like in our industry? Why are we all showing up to work every day? And what return does that give to our investors, regardless of whether you're a marketplace, an operator, or a landlord? There needs to be a benchmark for that. Otherwise, we cannot assess ourselves against any alternate use of space. And I think that needs to, again, be someone independent and trusted by the industry. So I think that's number one. Number two, and how do we get these groups together that are not traditionally mixed? I am hopeful, and I'll make one of my predictions for this year, is that this is the year that we're going to see some meaningful movement of traditional office owners and operators into the flexible space. What participation in our space looks like We'll see what that means. Are they going to open co-working facilities? No. I think what will happen this year is that people with systemic vacancy are going to start investing either in partnerships or technology to start delivering a more holistic tenant experience. And that's going to involve amenity booking, shared space access, partnerships with existing operators to fill their gaps, and they become lead sources for existing operators. But all of that is to say that they are going to get more meaningfully involved in shared space activities, because doing something is better than sitting on systemic vacancy. And I think if we, on one hand, have a trusted and independent arbiter of benchmark performance coming from within our industry, and more meaningful involvement of the largest controller of space in the market, then I think the combination of those two things can really start to bring the two, call it like cohorts, together and hopefully do something meaningful to increase the size of our market.
Yeah, and no, without a doubt. And I think part of it is, how do we, some of these organizations are so big that you have to go through layers, right? And we've experienced that. And it's like, how do we cut through some of those things? I mean, I think that's been the beauty for Industrious in our relationship at GWA or Juicy, is we go straight to the top, right? Straight to Jamie or Justin and work down from there. Even with WeWork's new, not so new, right? I guess Bob's going on almost a year, right? At the position. I mean, John, sorry.
Yeah.
I was thinking Bob, CBRE. John's been at the top almost a year now. And so it's like, how do we, he's been trying to learn the industry. He understands commercial real estate really, really well, obviously with an extended background. And so I think it's, how do we get direction from the top down in organizations? Same with IWG and others, as opposed to trying to swim upstream through a PR team and a real estate team and everything else. I think the same is the case at some of these corporate entities and enterprise users, is rather than starting with the real estate director, it's the CEOs and the C-level suites going, hey, you guys need to go to see what the operators are doing, see what the technology that's being provided is doing, and then just, working from there.
Yeah, and I hope that, obviously we do that on our side as a technology provider that's involved with WeWork operationally. That's the lens that we look at it through, is where we create synergies between all of our customers on the technology side that benefit, both the tenant challenges and the occupancy challenges that office owners are having, as well as like the growth scale challenges the co-working operators are having.
Yeah.
I hope the same thing is true of CBRE, that, you have a co-working operator that now has direct access to their GWS occupier services division. Like that should be a huge win, and one that benefits, corporate engagement in Flex, which helps us all. I hope these things happen. And again, this is where perhaps the echo chamber of Flex is really beneficial, right? Because if things like that happen, other people can jump on top of it, partner into it, and start to see, open up new revenue channels, create new opportunities, open new conversations for expansion. I hope those things happen. It feels like the winds of change, creating some activity towards the end of last year and this year. And I think the M&A announcement of the last week is showing that there's some consolidation and belief that there is value here. But I guess time will tell. We got to see how these play out and what people's true motivations are.
Yeah. And obviously, and that goes back to kind of the acquisition and the full circle back. So as far as your 7 months there, what role did you kind of play in this acquisition? Kind of what's your vision of how this acquisition will be able to continue allowing you to service the industry as a whole?
Well, in terms of my role in the acquisition, very little. I reviewed the companies, provided my feedback on, strategically how important these guys are to the market. But, Anat and our leadership team have a really strong vision for what co-working and Flex will be in, the next cycle. So my opinion on how strategically important these guys are was a very small part of it. But what I will say is that, we believe that a universal backbone or marketplace for access to space is is very necessary for our segment. One of the biggest challenges there is data quality and consistency. That's both across product types as well as geographies. We've spent a lot of time and have probably, upwards of 50 researchers making sure that we're connected to and talking to all operators to build our own marketplace. But there are niches where you need specialized technology and understanding to tap the market. And for us, DeskPass has been a leader in engaging corporates in this space. There's a couple of lead players, DeskPass, Liquid Space, to name a few, who are really meaningfully engaging that corporate user. And I already mentioned like how critical it is that those corporates get involved in our space, both as a point of validation as well as that's where the money lies. That the TAM of our market is in the booking from those users. So DeskPass does a really good job at providing the tools and engaging with those corporates to bring them into our segment. And similarly, Hubble HQ in the UK, they understand that there's this kind of chasm between the on-demand bookable inventory that you can go on a website and book today and the traditional brokered office space of like private suites. And they've done a really good job at introducing, e-commerce marketplace tools like Touch, site surveying and, expedited contracting processes to make sure that going out and getting, a 20-person suite is hopefully 1/5 as effective as getting a 100-person suite. So there are all these niches, and I think the building blocks need to come together. And that's where big players like Yardi, who focus on architecture and the backbone, is a really good partnership with smaller, nimble private players like Despass and Hubble, who are building really quality niche tools. And all of those things are necessary to like bring the marketplace together.
So I'm curious, the ecosystem, I mean, I love that you're so passionate about the marketplace and that, that kind of comes from your previous life at WeWork. Will these eventually come together as sort of one destination for the end consumer? Because you have a lot of disparate properties at this point, Coworking Cafe, and then the recent acquisitions. Anything you can share about kind of those plans and what that will look like?
Yeah, I wish I could give you a great answer to that. I will say that like cross-pollination of inventory is definitely going to be a big priority, right? Like you should be able to access the same thing regardless of the asset or the site that you access it through. And I think we have a big history.
Like Amazon and Zappos?
Yeah. But I mean, we have a history of that. You mentioned like Co-working Cafe, Commercial Search, Property Shark. Yeah, we own all these assets. A lot of them serve different UI, UX users. They serve different kind of customer segments. And I think that for at least for the medium term, that we'll keep serving the customer bases of these customers in the domain and the UI that they're familiar with. But behind the scenes, what's really important and I think more valuable long term is that the infrastructure and the inventory consistency and the accessibility is the same behind all. Yeah. What I would really love to see is that even if you love, you're a London-based corporate real estate user and you love Hubble to find your next team space, I want that to be pulling from inventory that was sourced by the Co-working Cafe team here in the US. So you should have access to all of that. So I guess what's more important to us, at least in the medium term, is building that backbone so that the capabilities, regardless of the front end, are increased for all users.
And is the vision more of a tech-enabled, like automated syncing of inventory? Or, I mean, that's kind of part of what you're talking about, right? Like
Yep.
the reliability of the inventory. Like, okay, well, I can see this suite. Is it still there? Is it really 10 per? Yeah. So is that part of the vision that will be more of a tech-enabled experience for both the provider and the end user?
Yeah, I mean, in short, I think we want people to be able to do more with more. I think there are niches within the market where a particular user type can access a certain type of inventory, but not all. And we want to just continue that expansion out. I think strategically for for Yardi, I mean, a lot of our mindset comes from like, where have we helped other related industries reduce the cost of customer acquisition by introducing technology? And like, we look at our rent cafe products in the multifamily space where, it would be almost absurd that you would actually physically engage with someone to book a tour, to pay your rent, to raise a service ticket. But a lot of those things are still very commonplace on the office and sometimes even on the co-working side. So I think we're just taking cues from what we've seen, and then obviously layer on top of that the hospitality element of co-working itself. A lot of that is self-service and light touch. So we want to make sure that, you can do more with more. And if the byproduct of that is that operators in our market can reduce their customer acquisition without any loss to their lead funnel, then hopefully we're delivering on both sides of the market.
So we need to take a break on professional stuff. And Will, what are you passionate about outside of work?
He's like, let me remember back to outside of work.
Yeah, 5 days ago before we came back from holidays, this was my favorite topic. And then you get slammed with a couple acquisitions when you walk into the office, and this is all you talk about. I mean, hell, there's a reason that some people work for Yardi and that we are based in beautiful Santa Barbara. And like half this office, if you tell us that there's some good waves in town, people will be coming in late, rocking up with the boards on their cars. We have beautiful mountains in our backyard to go hiking, mountain biking. We're just very blessed to live in a part of the world where we have a lot to do outdoors, notwithstanding the really scary stuff that's going on with the LA and Central Coast fires at the moment. But yeah, you give me the opportunity to go outside and I'll take that. I will say as a new dad of a 1-year-old, try to make sure that he stares at everything outdoors and builds that into his DNA is super important to me.
Yeah, and you recently had a big holiday trip, right?
Yes, sir. 16 hours back and forth from Australia with a 10-month-old on my lap. And I don't know, he didn't complain about not getting upgraded. He turned down all the champagne. So, I mean, I think I got a good traveler on my hands.
That's awesome. At that age, you're just like, oh, please let this go. Okay.
I feel like I had won the lottery at one point when we're halfway through the flight. My son is asleep across mine and my wife's lap, and we managed to get the tray tables down, meals on the tables, and he did not wake up. I was like, you know what? I don't think everyone else has it this good.
Yeah, how awesome. You and I briefly talked about how great was it to be able to have your family and friends meet him and spend time with him and do everything like that.
Oh, the best, man. The best. Particularly when I'm overseas from my family. So being able to like show up with a fully formed human that can laugh and smile and throw out a couple of nonsensical words. That's what it's all about.
And is your wife from the States?
She is a Seattleite. So we're an Australian, a Seattleite living in Santa Barbara. Yeah.
Okay,
doing
got
the best we can. Very lucky.
Wait, how did you meet? Because I don't see Seattle on the resume.
Oh, yeah. No, I did not live up there. No, it was a really long and serendipitous story of swipe right. So shout out to the people at Hinge. I don't know if they've got an exit in their future, but I like the product.
That's you're our second interview today who met on the internet. Our previous, wait, what did he claim it was? 26 years
25 years ago. 25 plus years ago.
What was the
details onto a punch card?
He said on the internet. I was like, Jamie was looking up. I was like, what was
going
on in the internet back then?
We did mention Lycos, which I do think was that like one of the early engines. And then the site was christianmatchmaking.com or something like that. I was like, they must have been the only people on there. Must have been.
He said they were the first. He said they were the first.
Totally.
They both happen to be in like different rooms at like UC Berkeley or something like that.
Texas. I mean, lots of funny things about that story.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Well, we digress. We'll go back to the professional side. So what are you excited about for 2025?
Oh, I think this concept of standardization across the co-working industry and what that standardization means to the broader office segment, I think is hugely valuable. To, I guess, like, put some context to that statement, a lot of people might or might not know that, the breadth or like the largest part of Yardi's business is in traditional commercial. Roughly half of US commercial runs on our, Voyager and other ERP systems. And we have an increasing number of our traditional office customers coming to us saying, like, how can we connect our tenants to their building, to their portfolio, to other best-in-class providers? And that starts, to me, sounding like exactly what the co-working industry does. We create networks of connected members based on needs for space, which tells me that maybe like the bear is waking up and it's time to do some really interesting stuff. So like what gets me excited is, bringing more best-in-class providers onto standardized systems, standardizing new partners we brought in like Hubble and DeskPass, and then turning around to the rest of the market and saying, how do you want to participate in this? Whether it's property managers who want to provide benefits of access to co-working to their, to their tenants, whether it's owner operators who are looking to augment their tenant capabilities and their service offering, or turn it around. Maybe it's co-working operators wanting to go into more professional space that's, class A trophy every now and again. That's not their co-working facility. All of those things are available with a standardized and connected backbone behind them. And I feel like, every market you require critical mass to achieve those kind of solutions. And I feel like, with the investment that Yardi's made in the co-working space over the last 7 years, we're kind of at that point where we can meaningfully provide some of these values to both sides of that market. So that's what gets me really excited. We've started to see green shoots that both sides want to participate. And that gives me a lot of motivation that this year is going to be one where, we see our market grow, but not in the traditional way of 18, 19, where we see, a new sign on a building with the known operators. It's going to be behind the scenes, connecting all supply and demand, to meet that diverse customer need. So that's what gets me fired up. I don't know. Do you guys see that?
Yeah, I mean, I think this acquisition I mean, we've had a lot of exciting news this week that signals, the growth of the industry. And to your point, not necessarily in new supply or, oversupply. And Anat talked when we interviewed him at the conference in September about the fact that co-working is, like that business is like 2% of Yardi's revenue.
Yep.
And this is another signal that, Yardi's really invested in the industry and will continue to invest and enable the growth, which is exciting. I think, that alone is really exciting. And to your point, the total addressable market is really in the enterprise customer, and anything that makes it easier for them to access is, I'm just looking at Rent Cafe right now, and you could just sort of see the analogous, like, to your point, like this just doesn't exist in our industry for office space. So it's exciting. I'm excited that Yardi is committed, and also, that excited, and to see what happens next.
Yeah,
I think an important part, Will, and we'll let you give this stat again, but part of what Anant said when he spoke to us in Phoenix was, what percentage of your business is actually the co-working industry?
I mean, it's 2% of our revenue, but he spends over 80% of his time on it. And I think, again, these acquisitions are putting our money where our mouth is. It's critically important. I think we're pretty transparent with how critical co-working as well as flexible office is to the health of the broader office segment. It takes time to change consumer behavior. It takes time to change the structure of the market. But I know that Yardi has a very long-term view and has an earned luxury in having that long-term view. But it's also extremely well informed by, our customers on all sides of this marketplace. So I think very little has changed from my first interview with Rob Teal, our global president, and Anat, when they told me, here's what we want to do in this space, and it very much aligned with why I knocked on their door. It's the exact same sentence that I hear today when we announce new announcements. It's the exact same one that we tell to, our largest, REIT customers who are office owners. It's consistent throughout, and I think we're starting to see, like you said, Jamie, more of these proof points that it's going in the right direction, and in time, not in the time frame that we would love, but it's going that direction.
So I have a logistical question. When you talk about Vast being part of the network,
Yep.
how is their inventory accessed for an end user? Like, how do they fit into the ecosystem?
Yeah, good question. So I think Vast is a great example of two things. Like, one is leveraging all of our lead generation channels. We're the back end of their websites to go book and create inquiries. We support third-party lead gen through our internet listing sites that you've mentioned. And the third one is we also connect them through a partnership, a B2B partnership with WeWork. So if you're a corporate customer on WeWork's workplace application, which is their flex workspace management SaaS platform, if you're looking for a desk and maybe you're looking, in, let's just say, where's somewhere where they are that we work
Florida.
with?
I mean, they have a lot of supply in Florida that WeWork may not have.
Let's say West Palm.
Mhm.
And I want to go work there for the day. I'm one of WeWork's corporate customers. WeWork's only in Miami. So I'm going to now, through that common infrastructure, the backbone behind the scenes, I'm going to have access to go book the Office Evolution or the Venture X in West Palm Beach through that native WeWork application. And I think that's the greatest and simplest example of what a connected backbone can do. There could be, and I hope will be, other partners that tap into these, call it peer-to-peer networks, to meet their customer need. WeWork has a very particular customer based on, their customer segment as well as their expectations of space. And there are partners through that consistent back end that we can connect them with to meet more of that need so that there is more volume and more understanding of our segment. And the similar could be said of, an institutional landlord or REIT. Their high credit customers want access to things that their landlords cannot reasonably provide in places that they can reasonably provide them. So this backbone can go both ways, and it can cross kind of segments between traditional commercial and co-working. And I think that Vast WeWork partnership is a good example of what's possible when we bring that together.
Will it ever go both ways? So can Vast give access to the network to their members? Will that be enabled in any way?
Yeah, in the course of time, I very much hope so, and we're working to make that a reality. Again, these are B2B partnerships right now, so it's completely up to the discretion of Jason and the team over at Vast and John and the WeWork team. But I think everyone can agree that, if you're willing to share your users, you should be very much willing to use those users as a demand channel in reverse.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, I think that's been a recognized gap for a long time, but there was no platform to facilitate that.
I would argue that a little in that, we're not
Okay,
the
go
first
for
to do kind of networked, there's the Upflexes of the world who've had relationships with them. But again, there's a critical component of data quality and consistency.
Mhm.
Is if you sticky tape together the whole thing, then the user experience will tell you that you haven't done a good job. So the reason that, every one of Yardi's customers hasn't been connected is, we need to do it in a way that really benefits the user experience. Because I think we're in a critical part where everyone is looking at co-working and saying, does it work? And you really need that corporate customer with a high expectation of quality to say, yeah, it does. And I think in the past, that's where some providers have kind of fallen over by saying, technically we can offer it, but we can't guarantee its quality. So we really don't want to fall into that trap and not be able to deliver.
Yep.
So it's funny as I sit here and I hear you talking about Vast and the recent acquisition that I can't talk about. I still remember being in the boardroom in Nashville being told I couldn't talk about the Vast partnership. So we're starting to create a common theme here. But based around that, I mean, part of the conversation was Vast is going to be the first of other partnerships and collaborations coming. I guess at this point, we're about 6 months into that. So kind of how's that looking? Are there other conversations being had? Are y'all still trying to figure out what that partnership looks like with Vast before you really go out to other collaborators, if you will?
I think there's a couple of things like that relationship between Vast and WeWork was a specific one for their cohort of WeWork workplace users. There are vast pools of co-working users outside of that one application. You know, they have their all access business of people that pop in on demand. And then they have their, I don't know if general population is the right word, but of just WeWork users. So we want to over time expand access to non-operated partners through all of their user populations. So that's one. And two is that it just takes time to change customer behaviors because and I'm sure this is true of most co-working operators, you know, you get used to the entry procedures of your facilities. You get used to the faces you see. You get used to knowing that here is how I book and access a meeting room. So even within the co-working world, there are like learned tribal behaviors. And that's even true of, or maybe even more true of WeWork customers. So getting them comfortable with trying something outside the network, given that there hasn't been, I'd say, a really well-functioning network where there is consistency of experience to date, that takes time. And we know that we're not going to knock it out of the park on the first experience, right? There's going to be feedback. We'll get notes and then we'll build from there. So I think, you know, the trends are positive. I guess to answer your question, Gio, like, does it grow beyond that partnership? I surely hope so, because there are many more collaborative partners, and I'm sure both of you could write me a list with a web of the most aptly aligned co-working operators in the country, and we could put them together. I think there's many, many different B2B partnerships and B2B2C partnerships where we can start giving operators access to the segments and the partners that they want.
Oh, rookie.
I know. That's essentially the gap I was thinking of, and that is probably further down the road in terms of solving. But right, I have a brand with a certain experience, and I would like to offer a network of spaces where my member will get a similar experience. And that may be, yeah, who knows? I mean, but that's hard to solve, and it's not solved by the current marketplaces because you can't, you know, you can tell a member that that's available, like publicly available, right? Like, but it's different than sort of supplying it as a benefit to your actual member, which is what WeWork's doing, right?
Yep.
Like WeWork's saying, we selected this partner. We trust the experience you'll have there, and therefore you're able to use those spaces. So I think more of that will be really compelling.
Well, because delivering that consistent customer experience, like you said, is like we're using this as a proof point of what we think can be like more broadly available in the market. But behind that is hundreds of engineers tackling all the little problems that come into like a consistent experience, from, you know, a consistent UX, being able to see actual availability on the piece of inventory that you want, getting a confirmation from the person that's going to host you, like a consolidated billing from different providers, like all of these things going on in the back end, just so that you can say, yeah, it worked. And you didn't have to think about any of those things. I think that's really where I think we have competitive advantage, just from tribal knowledge around what goes on behind the scenes of delivering that experience. And again, maybe I'll bring it all the way back up. What we have lacked is probably that front end experience, which WeWork is really good at, which DeskPass is really good at, which Hubble is really good at. And that's where I see synergies between Yardi's relationship with all of those, is that delivering that front end customer experience on top of where we're really strong and the nitty gritty back of house stuff. I think that's where we really see, the value in what we're doing. And again, like what gets us really excited for this year.
Yeah. And I think as we look at the year, I mean, I think there's going to be, we're early into, I mean, it's 2 weeks into the year and we've already got two big acquisitions. And I think there's going to be more. I think there's going to be more opportunity. We've been saying this for a while now. I think there's going to be more buy-in from the service providers. I think there's going to be more buy-in from the landlords. There's going to be, what we really need buy-in from is the financial side of stuff. More people understand how the flex industry assets are overall valued, but also what the value is of their amenitization of spaces and the needs for it. Because I mean, that affects everything. Is the shorter term agreements are still being scrutinized. And so I'm excited for there to be bigger announcements along the way, in addition to what you guys are doing. I'm sure you guys are working on other fun stuff. I don't know if it'll come through this year, but I think that's the exciting part is just continuing to see these mergers and acquisitions and just consolidation of the conversations we're all trying to push and have.
Yeah, I think the consolidation part of the cycle is, I think it's fun. It's a validation of like all the really interesting things that these individual companies have been working on. And that comes from thousands of hours of like delivering real customer value. But the consolidation part is fun because it allows us to scale that out and prove like, are these things which fundamentally change the structure of our industry? And I think anything where any acquisition target is a big nod of confidence that like, yes, this is something that we think is going to be part of the fabric moving forward. So I think that what we see in short from what we've announced this week is that we believe the corporate customers are as important, if not more important than ever, to participate in our segment, and that, expanding the kind of self-service nature of the co-working industry out to like private suite sales, without trying to start the old argument of disintermediating brokers, but there needs to be some form of, self-service and, low touch processing that's introduced to the industry. But I think between those two things, we firmly believe that they're going to be a part of the fabric moving forward.
Okay, so what are you and Sam going to do to celebrate a little bit tonight?
Oh, I wish we were celebrating. I'm
Oh.
doing dry January, so I don't know how much celebrating. We might go check out. There's been some killer sunsets in Santa Barbara recently. Take him to one of my favorite Central California restaurants, but in the traditional sense, it'll be a very dry celebration. But
Okay, nice.
in the more professional sense, I mean, working with his team, I mean, Sam and Aaron and Madeline, I mean, they've been fantastic. They know things that we do not because they have been in the trenches.
Yep.
And it's really exciting to introduce small entrepreneurs into organizations as large as Yardi, because they inject this shot of life and a new perspective on how we do things. And I mean, that's super invigorating for me personally, as well as our organization.
I love it. Will, thanks for taking the time to do this. And
Yeah,
you've got a lot going on. Gio, nice job talking Will into recording on the day when this is about to get announced. Yeah, we appreciate that. And I'm sure you'll be a repeat guest because you're kind of in the thick of the evolution of the industry. So we hope you'll continue to keep us updated.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. I appreciate the conversation as always. You two are very, very valued partners of Yardi's and very, very important proponents of what we're all doing. So I appreciate the time to chat.
Yeah, and what I'll say, Will, is you're such a valuable asset to us just because you're quote unquote an outsider coming in and adding value and looking at things from a different light. And so I want to extend gratitude to you for that, always being very direct and straightforward, and just you're a visionary, right? And I think that's a big part that we need. Is sometimes, back to your point, is being in the circle that we're at. We're having the same conversations, and for you to come in and challenge some of those things and really lead from that side has been a big difference. It's great to have you at the events and be able to just continue to participate in leading your team, and we just are grateful for everything you've done over the last 6 months, and we look forward to many more years of it.
Yes, sir. I appreciate that.
Take care.
All right.